All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tackling one of the most important books ever written, The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. Now, this book didn't just introduce a new idea, it completely flipped our understanding of life itself. And honestly, we're still feeling the shockwaves. So let's get into the ideas that truly changed the world forever. Darwin ended his book with this massive understatement. He knew his ideas had profound implications, not just for birds and beetles, but for us. He was basically saying, hey, everything you think you know about your own history, it's about to get a complete rewrite. And rewrite it, he did. Very few books have kicked up such a lasting storm of controversy. Darwin's theory, the idea that species evolve through a gradual process driven by the survival of the fittest, didn't just spark debate, it revolutionized the entire course of science. So, what were these revolutionary ideas? Well, Darwin's whole argument really rests on two main pillars. The first, as the biologist Sir Julian Huxley points out, was all about proving the fact of evolution itself through the idea of a common ancestry. What's really interesting here is the phrase Darwin actually used, descent with modification. He argued that species weren't just poof, created in their final forms. Nope. He laid out this mountain of evidence to show that they had evolved from earlier, different forms through a slow, gradual transformation over millions of years. And the logic here, it was just inescapable. If the different species of finches on the Galapagos Islands could evolve from a single ancestor, then why not bigger groups? Given enough time, Darwin realized, this had to be true for all of life. It connects every single organism, from an amoeba to an elephant, all the way back to one simple original stock. Okay, so if life evolves, the next huge question is how? And that brings us to Darwin's second, and you could argue his most brilliant contribution, the actual mechanism driving the whole thing. He called it natural selection. The starting point for this idea actually came from an economist, Thomas Malthus. Darwin realized that every living thing is trying to multiply, but resources are finite. And that leads to this constant struggle for existence, not just against predators, but against each other and against the physical environment itself. To really drive home just how intense this pressure is, Darwin did this mind-blowing calculation. He took the elephant, the slowest breeder he could think of. He figured that if just one pair were allowed to reproduce without any checks, any limits at all, in only 750 years, you'd have nearly 19 million of them. The planet just can't handle that kind of growth for any species. So the key is how this struggle shapes life. It's really a simple four-step process. First, you've got variation. We're not all clones, right? Second, inheritance. We pass our traits to our kids. Third, competition. Like we just saw with the elephants, way more are born than can possibly survive. And finally, selection. Any individual that just happens to have a variation giving it a slight edge is more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on that winning trait. It's an automatic, natural process. But Darwin didn't see this war of nature as this constantly grim, violent thing. He actually had a more nuanced view. He saw it as a process where, for the most part, it's the healthy, the well-adapted, the successful that get to thrive. It's a system that favors success and keeps life going strong. Now, this wasn't just some wild idea he cooked up overnight. Darwin spent decades meticulously collecting evidence from every corner of the natural world. He knew he had to build an unshakable mountain of facts. So let's take a quick look at the main lines of evidence he used to build his case. He pulled evidence from everywhere. He pointed to artificial selection in pigeon breeding to show how humans could create wildly different forms in a short time. He showed the similar bone structures, the morphology, in a human hand and a bat's wing. He pointed out useless or rudimentary organs, and he used the unique distribution of species and the fossil record to paint this picture of life changing over vast stretches of time and space. So when you put all that evidence together, it led to this profound, permanent shift in how we see the world, and maybe more importantly, how we see ourselves. The impact was nothing short of a revolution in thought. And this slide really gets to the heart of that shift. Before Darwin, it was common to see humanity as something special, the pinnacle of creation, totally separate from the animal kingdom. But after Darwin, that wall came crashing down. We were no longer lords of nature. We were a branch on the tree of life, deeply connected to every other living thing. Just like Sir Julian Huxley put it, Darwin's work completely transformed our entire picture of humanity. It didn't just explain the diversity of life, it gave us a new identity. We stopped looking at nature from the outside in. We finally saw ourselves as part of the process. So all of this leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. If Darwin's theory so completely reshaped how we understand our past and our present, what does it tell us about our future? In a world of rapid environmental change, his ideas about adaptation and survival, well, they feel more relevant than ever, don't they? Look, this has just been a quick flyover of an incredibly deep and powerful book. If you want to explore these game-changing ideas in Darwin's own words, we really encourage you to download the complete ebook of The Origin of Species. You can find it in PDF format over at digzon.com. Thanks so much for joining me.